Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's class, The Wisdom of the Soul, presented by the Ageless Wisdom Mystery School. In many ways, we're going back to basics today. Whenever I do a radio program or a class like this on the subject of fear, in my own mind anyway, I think of it as returning to basics. Because it is just so fundamental. I mean, the fundamental nature of reality is consciousness. Let's be clear. The fact that we're sentient, that we're aware, is the primal cause behind everything. If you look at cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect, if you daisy chain your way back, for example, like, well, what caused this? And you look at it and say, well, yeah, but that must be an effect of something else. So what was its cause? And you keep going back, it's awareness. It's the one thing you cannot get behind. And again, in Eastern philosophy, the word consciousness or awareness is used and often capitalized to represent the absolute, the divine nature, the prime source, the prime mover, God, right? The absolute. And in the Western Abrahamic traditions of Judaism and Christianity and Islam, that consciousness is referred to as love. That's an important concept to understand, that Judeo-Christian love and Islamic love is consciousness. In fact, the Trinity in Islam, at least among Sufis and Sufism, is the beloved, love, and the lover. The beloved being the source, God, Allah, and the lover being each of us, the individual incarnated, the physical realm, and love being that consciousness element in between that connects energy to matter or spirit to matter. And that's the Christos. If you ever wondered what Christ is about, it's not the last name of Jesus or Joseph or Mary. It wasn't like Joe Christ and Mary Christ had a son named Jesus. Christ is a title. And that Christos is a reference to an energy or a spirit or a force. Hence love meaning consciousness. Consciousness is love. The absence of that is fear. And that's where we begin. Now, love is not a feeling, technically, as I've just described. It's the vivifying life force itself. But there are qualities of feeling that go with love, primarily happiness, joy, peace, contentment, excitement and enthusiasm, a sense of adventure, contentment. Did I say that? But love itself, even in clinical psychology, is not seen as an emotion. There are 6 basic emotions: happiness and sadness, anger, fear, surprise, and disgust. Those are the 6 basic emotions: happiness, sadness, anger and fear, surprise, and disgust. And then all other feelings radiate out from there. There is a feeling wheel I may talk about in one of our classes about, it shows those 6 feelings in the center. But if someone were to say, well, it comes down to 2, it would be love and fear. And so what is fear? It's the absence of love. It's the absence of consciousness. And yet we all have it. Now, there's a lot of denial around it, right? Like, I'm not afraid. Okay. I have my doubts. I tend to worry sometimes, maybe too much. Maybe I worry too much, but I'm not afraid. Well, I have my concerns, but you can't call that fear. Really? Why not? How does it benefit us to find a dozen different names for fear, to minimize it, and to ignore it and deny it and repress it as if there's some benefit in running away? And this is where we're going to begin after the opening meditation with what I really feel is the most important concept of all to understand when we talk about fear, love and fear, or consciousness, and the absence of being conscious or aware. And that's that fear has nothing at all to do with danger. And yet every dictionary, even the Oxford Dictionary, I've checked, every dictionary I've ever looked in describes fear as an emotional feeling that is a response to danger, real or imagined. There's some threat or hazard, real or imagined. But it's not true. What fear is how it feels not to understand. It's unawareness, it's uncertainty, it's confusion, it's ignorance. Ignorance. It's ignorance and ignorance. And we can prove that because the antidote is understanding. Whether you call it fear or anxiety or stress or worry or doubt, or I'm just a little nervous, slightly apprehensive, I have my concerns all the way out to panic and horror and the dysfunctions that accrue as a result of that, like phobias or panic attacks or obsessive compulsive disorder or even attention deficit disorder. There are so many problems. Depression, of course, is not thought of as an anxiety disorder, but maybe it should be. They're so closely allied. Not all depression, but most depression is anxiety. So if we call it anxiety, now it's not fear. Clinical psychologists might say, yeah, there's a difference. Fear is a response to danger. There you go again. But anxiety is sort of free-floating and non-specific. It's the result of overstimulation and just not being able to figure stuff out. But again, as far as I'm concerned, it's all fear, because whether you call it anxiety or fear or anything else, the more you understand the world and yourself, the less fear and anxiety you experience, the less stress, the less you suffer. So the question is, how do I understand? How do I understand what I'm afraid of? How do I lift my experience and my knowledge to a more complete and profound level of understanding? And of course, that's awareness, that's consciousness, isn't it? So we close the circle. That's what we're going to talk about today. And it's just so important. I can't emphasize enough. I wish I could. Maybe I am. How important it is for us to become fearless, to confront not only the major paralyzing fears in our lives when they present themselves, whether externally, the fear of some situation, or more to the point, internally, the fear that comes from low self-awareness. Those are the two kinds, really. What is it we don't know when we're afraid? We don't know the world around us. We don't know what's going to happen next. Something new in our lives is unknown, or something old was never understood, like stuff from childhood. There is situational awareness, but The self-awareness is the problem. We don't know ourselves. That's the source of our fear. Could it be? Could it be that simple? That to know thyself is to remove the fear? And you begin to understand what you're really capable of when you face what you don't know and see it not as a danger, but an opportunity to learn and step into that anxiety, step into those fears. The primary theme of my book, Fearless Intelligence, is on the very top of the back cover, is my epiphany as a young man sitting in meditation, hearing a voice in my head that said, Michael, the best parts of you are hidden where you're most afraid to look. And wow, you mean that's where all the answers are hidden? Of course, they're hidden where I refuse to go. So go there. You know, more in a minute. Let's do our opening meditation. If you get comfortable in your chairs or your pillow, sitting on your meditation cushion, cross-legged on the bed, wherever you happen to be, close your eyes and settle in. Take a few nice, slow, deep breaths, pulling in strength and power as you inhale, ideally through the nose. As you peak, hold for just a beat, and then exhale through the nose or the mouth, just as slowly and evenly, going beyond where you'd normally stop, all the way out. And then pause for a beat before you inhale. Slow it down. Initially, it might be 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out. But I think you'll find as you become more and more relaxed, it's easier to breathe even more slowly, 6 or 8 seconds, maybe even 10 or 12 seconds. But don't push yourself, whatever's comfortable. Just be aware that by forming the intention, you can create and sense a letting go feeling, particularly as you exhale. And you feel the furniture supporting you, the floor supporting you. As you begin to breathe normally again, put your attention on the bottom of your nose. Find your spot. Move around a little bit, that little pinpoint of awareness, and find your place. Tip of the nose, that ridge line of cartilage, the septum between the nostrils. Inside the rim of the nostrils. Wherever you find your attention settling comfortably. Begin to watch the body breathing itself. The letting go feeling again. You're turning it over, you're acknowledging that the body breathes itself for 99% of the day. And more. You need not pay attention to your breathing or breathe deliberately. The body breathes itself. And in this exercise called Vipassana, or insight meditation, you identify as the witness rather than the breather. Those slow, deep, deliberate breaths, you were the breather. Now you're not. Let it go. and identify as the spectator. You're like at the ball game in the bleachers, watching with a certain degree of curiosity, even fascination. The body breathing itself. And you do this passively, without any interference. And you do this without judgment. For there is no such thing as a better breath, or a breath that wasn't as good as this other breath. It's absurd on the surface. Let it happen. You are free, of course, to wonder about the period of your breathing. It may be faster or slower than you expected or anticipated. You may be a little surprised to find that it's a bit uneven at times. Or that one nostril seems favored over the other, at least in this moment. Observe it, but don't judge it. Be aware of that distinction. That you're engaged only as a spectator, not a participant. And you watch the simple back and forth of your breath. Becoming an around and around. Just as your legs on a bicycle go up and down, and your feet go around and around. The back and forth of your breathing is really a circle. From your first breath at birth to your last. The body breathes itself. And the point of the practice, you see, is that we develop the so-called executive functions of the brain, in the frontal lobe of the human brain. Ability to make choices, to make decisions, to simply pay attention. To develop the space between what happens to us and what we choose to do with it. We might be less reflexive and more conscious, and deliberate, and purposeful in thinking and feeling before we speak or act. So by developing non-attachment, the ability to watch the breath without participating, you can study the mind, you see, without suffering the illusion or delusion that you are always the thinker. Sometimes we are. Our thinking is task-oriented, and we participate. But much of what we call thinking is intrusive, filled with negativity and worry and doubt and shadowy fears. And we call it thinking. But there's nothing deliberate about it. It is task unrelated. And it's intrusive. And you can watch it without being the thinker. You don't have to believe every thought that occurs to you. You don't have to take ownership. Some thoughts that occur to us are bizarre, truly strange. We may at times wonder, where in the world does that come from? And we wonder about ourselves. What kind of person am I that I would entertain these thoughts for even a moment or two? We judge ourselves too harshly. Those are not our thoughts. It's just stuff that bubbles up from the unconscious. Bubbles up into awareness. The question is, which of these random thoughts do we choose to pursue? Do we entertain or invite to stay for dinner? And which do we allow to just move along and pass by? Like a river, the water streams. Just let it go if you don't want to hold on to it. You can take a look at it, even if it's negative, perhaps especially if it's negative. Is there anything in here for me? Is there any value? Is there any merit to this? If so, explore it further. Most of the time there won't be. We just let it go. It's like tuning the radio dial. There's a lot of radio stations on that dial you have no interest in listening to, so move on. But you see, this requires an ability to discern the difference between a task-related, deliberate, and purposeful thought and the intrusive, often negative monkey mind, the chattering, the frenzy that increases with stress and anxiety. And to be able to witness that in meditation without pursuing it, just watching it. We can learn to live our lives in much the same way we watch a really good movie. The movie affects us mentally and emotionally, maybe even physically. Movies can make us laugh or cry. It can make us feel excited, or sad and depressed. We can respond with a full range of emotions. By allowing ourselves to see these shadows on the wall, these flickering images on the screen as if they're real. And we get involved. We, in a sense, participate. But only to a point. Maybe you decide suddenly you want a sandwich, so you put it on pause and go make a sandwich. Or you decide this movie's getting too dark for me. I thought this was going to be good, but I'm not interested. And you change the damn channel. You go away. So you stand a leg in both worlds. You're involved in the movie, the film that you're watching on the television or in the theater. And yet at the same time, you know you're not. You can do that with your waking life. You can watch it happening around you, and when it gets out of control or frightening or intimidating or humiliating or heartbreaking or terrifying, you can let go and watch it. Put your attention on your breathing. Tell yourself you're safe. If you feel you're not safe, then take some steps to be safe. But you're almost always safe. It's like if someone that you love, that you really care about, says something nasty and hurtful and insulting to you, and you react like a 9 on a 10 scale. Imagine if somebody 3 blocks away, they live 3 blocks down the street, you don't even know who they are, But they said the same thing to you with the same passion and the same intent. It might rise to a 2 or a 3 on the 10 scale. The very same insult, the very same words with this exact intention has an entirely different impact on you because it wasn't someone close to you. So, do we give them the power? The person in the family that hurt you, or the person 3 blocks away that tried but wasn't as successful? Do they get the power to do this to us, or can we, through non-attachment, empower ourselves to be responsible for the impact that it has on us? Responsibility is the ability to observe and respond consciously. And in this way, we face our fears. We embrace what we do not understand. We take ownership of it, accountability and responsibility for it. Our emotions are our responses. They're not done to us. The stimulus is merely that. The response is yours. And we can be at choice about the way we respond and change the quality of our lives by being at choice, by being that aware, that conscious. And our fears become nothing but shadow. And we are the light. We are the light that illumines the way as we step into the shadows, into our fears, knowing they are nothing more than what we do not understand. How else would we understand them but by moving into them? Bring your light to the shadow, and the shadow is no more. Imagine exploring a house and you come to a room that's dark and you peek in and it seems scary inside because it's dark and you can't see. There's no reason to believe there's danger in there, but nevertheless you're cautious. Maybe you don't call it fear, but you're not willing to just step into that room without finding the light switch. And only when the light is turned on and you look around do you feel safe to enter. Think that through. Feel that out. Our fears and our worries and our doubts are not dangerous. There is no threat. They merely represent what we do not understand. This is who and what we are, agents. Agents of an energy that redeems fear into love. And how does love drive out fear? In exactly the same way understanding drives out ignorance, by the very nature of what it is. Oh, I was afraid that, and then I saw, oh, far out, nothing to fear here. again and again and together. A lather, rinse, repeat over and over and over and over and over. Face your fear, breathe, step into it. It's who you are. It's what you're made for. It's what we do. Tell yourself you're safe. That this universe conspires to support you in all ways. That you are a fearless champion, an advocate, a cheerleader, a superhero of love and truth and wisdom and beauty. And your daily efforts are directed toward vanquishing fear and ignorance, wherever you find it. First in your own life. You model that for others. You help them do the same thing. Take the walk. Be the light that dispels those horrible shadows, those exaggerated, you've noticed, I'm sure, shadows are grossly exaggerated and distorted and seemingly grotesque, but they're not real. They are completely devoid of substance, aren't they? Be the light. Be fearless in all things, not just the big overwhelming things that you have to face, but the most subtle little apprehensions and the tiniest little bit of nervousness. That funny, uneasy feeling that comes with anything new and unknown. Or, as I said, old and never understood. Commit yourself to that. That's the hero's journey. All the dragons that need to be slayed or slain are within us. And beyond the dragon lies the gold. Feel the chair supporting you, or the furniture you're seated upon, the cushion, the pillow, the bed. Form the intention to return to the wide-awake state with a full memory and a deep understanding of what we just went through, what we've just done. Feel a gentle rising up, a floating up, like waking in the morning. And now, open your eyes, wide awake, back in the room. Eyes open now, wide awake, back in the room. Feeling so much better than before. Take a big breath. And exhale. Maybe stretch a little bit. Tap your feet on the floor, get back in your body. Wide awake, back in the room, feeling better and better and better. Very good. So, do you understand how the weather works, high pressure and low pressure areas, and that you have these cyclonic and counter-cyclonic weather systems? Or maybe you've heard that in the northern hemisphere of the world, Water goes down the drain in one direction, and in the southern hemisphere, it goes down the drain in the other direction. Energy always moves in spirals. You can see it in many galaxies. Now that we have these incredible telescopes. By the way, have you seen any of the photos from this new James Webb Deep Space Telescope? It's 1 million miles from Earth. They put that puppy way out there. And gosh, it's just like so much greater resolution than even the Hubble, by far. I don't know the factor, 10 times better, 100 times better, I don't know, but it's much better than even Hubble. It's just amazing. We're looking so deeply into space that we're looking at the beginning of time itself. We're looking at galaxies that are just beginning to form stars. So far away, it took that long, billions and billions of years for the light to reach us. Telescopes are time machines. So you see these spiral galaxies. You see spirals in water going down the drain. You see spirals in your weather, tornadoes, hurricanes, dust devils. They're all sporadic. That's the way energy moves. The wind off or the air off an airplane wing or a bird's wing. The water coming off the back of a boat spirals. It's the way it moves. Well, I'd like to introduce you to a concept that is sporadic and is a mental and emotional engagement. In one case, the spiral is fear and ignorance, and the way the emotion, the feeling of fear, and the mental state of ignorance promote each other into a movement that goes around and around, but it's sporadic, so it also has the third dimension of pulling you down and down. So think about it. Anything that's frightening is confusing. The more frightened you are, the more stressed, the more nervous, the more shattered and scattered you become. Right? Sometimes when people yell at us, or they come at us rapid fire, we can even inadvertently train people to do that. They feel powerful because we get scattered and we can't really put our thoughts together and we don't really know what to say. And it's like, it's all too much, right? It's just, you're overwhelmed. They take unfair advantage of you that way. Even litigation in a courtroom, they'll do that, pressure you and scatter your attention. So fear and anxiety makes us unaware. We could almost say fear makes you stupid, but you're not really stupid. You just can't. There's a trade-out. The body, when it feels afraid, it thinks there's a danger. It prepares you. And one of the trade-outs is you lose the higher brain function. And instead of being creative, you're left with either or, fight or flight. Right? You got to survive. So good ideas never occur to you when you're stressed out, when you're having an argument of significance or dealing with difficult people or stressed out for whatever reason. That's not when you get great ideas. That's not when you suddenly write a song, right? Or realize some pattern in your life. Great ideas happen when you're deeply relaxed, when you're in the shower, when you're walking the dog, or Miller time, you're on the back porch and your feet up, looking at the clouds, and suddenly you get this great insight, this understanding. So stress and anxiety and worry and doubt and nervousness and all of that, which collectively we call fear, promotes ignorance. Not only makes it difficult to learn and understand, but it takes what we already knew and shatters and scatters that. And ignorance, for its part, just being confused or uncertain, is a scary feeling. So do you see how each feeds the other? How fear promotes ignorance, which promotes fear, which promotes ignorance. There's your cyclone. That's the fuel. That's the engine that pulls you down. You feel the great sucking feeling, the great toilet flush of confusion. It's fear and ignorance. That's the low pressure area that pulls you down. The antithesis of that, the opposite, the complement, is a cycle in the other direction, a spiral that lifts you up. And that would be as I say, the antithesis. What is the opposite of fear? Love. What is the opposite of ignorance? Understanding. Love and understanding. Wow, those two words really go together, don't they? I've heard those words used together, love and understanding. Would love promote understanding? Let me think. What is love? Well, it's a peaceful, easy feeling. I think I just quoted the Eagles. It's contentment. It's feeling safe and relaxed, right? Does that not promote understanding? Well, of course it does. Right? And understanding, how does it feel to suddenly realize something, to understand it, oh, I see. Yeah. Thought I knew it, but now I really understand it. Big breath. Phew, that's a relief. And all this wonderful warmth, this love, this happiness comes rushing in. So you have that same effect of love promotes understanding, understanding promotes love, which promotes understanding, which promotes love. There's your cyclone, only this is the high pressure. This comes up. This lifts you up. By the way, and for the purposes of today's class, it's a bit of an aside, but what would connect those two? How do I get from the downward spiral of fear and ignorance? How can I transition to that? How can I reverse it and transition to that upward spiral of love and understanding? I think there are two tracks. This is the way I think of it anyway. And by the way, you'll find all of this in my book, Fearless Intelligence. And my God, you can get the ebook for like $7, or I think I saw it on Amazon for $4. And paperback is like $19, so you can't have a fast food lunch for that. So help the indie author. Fearless Intelligence. If you don't have a copy, if you haven't given them to your friends, I really appreciate the support. I put 5 years into 5 years into that book. Really proud of it. The two tracks that lift us from the downward spiral of fear and ignorance to this beautiful upward spiral of love and understanding are relaxation and responsibility. They're both R's, like railroad. Think of a railroad, has two tracks. One of them is relaxation, one of them is responsibility. Relaxation as in meditation, as in breathing, as in letting go. Responsibility, the ability to choose a response. You've got to give up victimization and helplessness I will concede that in many ways life is a two-way street. But most people see it as 95% done to us, and maybe 5 or 10% what we do with it or what we initiate. And if that's the way you see it, then that's your reality. You've got to think of life primarily as what you put into it. You know, the great axioms about give and ye shall receive and do unto others. It's not about, or sowing so that you reap. It's not about harvest the grain so you'll have seeds to sow it, or if they apologize, then you'll apologize. It's like, first you give, first you initiate, right? You have to go first. That's leadership. Think of it as leadership. Each of us, when you find the freedom in what I'm about to say, it's just extraordinary. Listen to this. I've said it before. It bears repeating. It's deep and profound. Each of us is responsible for circumstances and situations we did not cause. You see a piece of trash on the street, bend over, pick it up, put it in your pocket, and don't think twice about it. And when you get home, throw it in the trash. Just because you didn't do it. Come on, we're not 6 years old and arguing with our brother or sister. Imagine if half of the world did that. Imagine if 10% of the world did that. Imagine if 2% of the world behaved in that way. Now imagine yourself behaving in that way. There's limits. There's stuff you can't do that you'd like to do. We want to have more impact on global warming. We want to stop the insanity of war and extreme poverty and homelessness in our big cities and gun violence and fentanyl, and the world is going to hell in a handbasket. The strong movement toward fascism in America is indicated by politicians who turn Americans against other Americans. It's that simple. When a politician tells you that your enemy is your neighbor, remember, love thy neighbor? Your enemy is the guy next door to you that is in a union, or a school teacher, or a scientist, or a doctor, and you should hate them and fear them. That's fascism. That leads to fascism. That's an authoritarian move. So we could make a long list of what's wrong with the world, but instead of saying, well, how do I fix that? There's nothing I can do. And then you succumb to that sense of powerlessness. Do little things. Be responsible for circumstances, for situations you did not cause. That's a way of facing fear and stepping into your power. It will change the way you feel. It'll change the way you think. It will change who you are. It will grow who you are. I don't mean just lateral change or random change. You'll be different. You'll be more. It's growthful. It's progressive. Relaxation and responsibility are the keys to lifting ignorance to understanding. And just as understanding drives out ignorance by virtue of what it is, so too consciousness drives out evil. To be aware is the secret. To understand. That's how you fight evil. It's that easy. You understand it. You face it. You want to be a warrior, a spiritual warrior? Your shield is love. Your sword is truth. You want to arm yourself as a spiritual warrior? Pick up the shield of love, What that does is repel everything that is not love. You know, love's magnetic, right? Right? I feel attracted to you. Oh, you not so much. I'm rather repelled by you. There's a magnetic quality to consciousness. So your shield is love. It attracts love and repels everything that is not. But the sword is truth. And it's not a sword for letting blood or killing people. It's a sword for rendering the veils of illusion, cutting through the miasma, the smoke and the fog and everything that stands in the way of seeing truly and clearly what's actually happening. You become a champion not only for yourself, but for those who don't understand, those who are poorly equipped. You can really be a champion. Not from rhetoric and not from arguing politics, not from overdosing on CNN or MSNBC or Fox News. Be careful of that. My God, that's what I did for a living. I even taught journalism in college, and I'm telling you, don't overdose on that. Be careful. You got to expose yourself to it because you want to be well informed and aware and smart and current, hip to the trick, what's going on here in the world. But my God, don't, just because it's good to be smart and knowledgeable doesn't mean more is always better. You scare the bejesus out of yourself if you watch too much of that stuff. You know. You know what Doreen and I do? I hope she doesn't mind me telling. We'll every once in a while we'll switch over to a Fraser or remember the old Fraser shows or Andy Griffith. We'll watch Andy and Barney or something innocent like that, just to cleanse the palate before we go on to our movies. It's a real palate cleanser, that innocence. So when we talk about heroes, and Joseph Campbell is the fellow that gets credit for using or coining, I guess, the phrase the hero's journey. The hero's journey is really a monomyth. It is a formula. If you've ever thought about writing fiction, you must know about the monomyth. Google it. It is a formula in all great fable. And Campbell described the monomyth as a hero's journey. And the subtext, the primary concept, is that the adventures of the hero in fighting evil, saving the damsel in distress, always have the appearance of being external. I think of the Tolkien trilogy, and we were watching a bit of this this new extended version came out, this 3.5 hour, where they go through the mines, and this is where they lose Gandalf for a time. He goes off the cliff. And what does that represent? This great evil that rises up out of the depths of the earth, this fiery monster that Gandalf engages, and these other trolls and goblins and orcs and monstrous beings from the pits of hell. That's the subconscious. We've all got that going on. Or whether it's Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, and or the Wicked Witch in the Wizard of Oz. Notice there were good witches in Oz as well. And fighting evil is about facing fear. But the significance of the monomyth is that it's internal. The dragons that need to be slain to get to the gold, the witches that need to be dispatched, if you're going to liberate the beautiful princess from her prison tower, are in you. They're the shadows in you that need to be faced and battled. But usually it's just a matter of, it's not much of a battle once you face it. You realize it's shadow and represents your failure to understand yourself. Yeah, the world, as I said, situational awareness, but that's a reflection of you. So the real battle is with yourself. The source of our fear is us. You see? It's our ignorance, it's our lack of understanding, it's our unwillingness to know who we are. As unique individuals incarnate in these animal bodies, unique individuals, fingerprint evidence, DNA proof of our individuality, of our uniqueness, a universe that won't even replicate snowflakes, right? And paradoxically, part of one whole thing. Like a jigsaw puzzle, every piece is unique, every piece is different, the different shape has a different position, it has different information on the surface, but it all snaps together to form one whole thing. And it's not an either or, it's a both. You are the one life. You're an aspect of that. Like all colors come from white light, all from the same rainbow. See? So blue is not yellow, and green is not red. They're different colors, but they're all from one light. Chords. Play the first, the third, and the fifth on a piano. It's a beautiful chord. Flat the third, minor chord. Beautiful. Sounds like one thing. It's three different notes vibrating at three different frequencies, but those frequencies have a mathematical relationship to each other. If I remember right, the fifth is 2/3 and the third is 3/4. It's mathematical. It's why it sounds harmonious. It's why it fits. You know, the Beach Boys, a barbershop quartet, you know, the Bee Gees. Why does that sound so incredible? Those harmonies. So between unity and diversity is harmony. Between spirit and matter is consciousness. Between energy and the material world is love, consciousness, harmony. And this is truth, and this is wisdom, and this is awareness. And it's the antidote to fear. It's understanding. Okay? Shield is love. Sword is truth. Each of you are spiritual warriors. I know you are. You're here. You sit here listening to this. Hopefully you'll comment now. I want to go to the Q&A and hear from you some comments, some questions. Oh, by the way, quick aside, I should have mentioned this at the top. I'm just remembering it now. You know, the studio salon I've been talking about, I have 9 signups, and I said the limit was 10. So if I haven't heard from you and you're on the fence, if you email me today, awmysteryschool@gmail.com, I've got, it sounds like a pitch, right? Only one left, limited supply, get yours while they last. I've got 1 spot left. Spots will open up. People are not going to do this forever. Spots will open up in the future. But if you're ready to rock with the Saturday event, which is going to begin on August 5, Saturday, the 5th of August at 11 California time. I've got one spot open. Maybe others will back out. I don't know. Maybe there'll be 2 or 3 that open up. Sometimes people with good intent are not able to follow through. But at this point, I've got 9 signed up out of 10. So let me know about that. Email awmysteryschool@gmail.com if you're interested in that ongoing Saturday salon. And if you want to know more about it, you can go to my website, click on personal development. You'll see an infographic there. So comments or questions, I'd love to hear from you. And just chat Mindy. She's our co-host today. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Melinda.
I'm going to pass to Zach. He has something to say.
All right.
Yes, what you were discussing reminded me a lot of the Mahayana Buddhist Bodhisattva vow, which is a very dramatic vow, in which you vow to obtain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. And then it's made very clear by this that you are dedicating yourself to you personally saving all conscious beings. You
Right.
personally are willing to save all conscious beings. Well, on the face of it is absurd, because it doesn't matter what kind of Buddha you are, you're not going to be able to save all sentient beings. But I believe the point of it is that willingness is just an overwhelming act of love, and puts you in a position of loving all sentient beings. That you're putting them first too, because you're not going to go into nirvana. Even if you become a Buddha, you're not going to go into like a perfect state of non-suffering. You're willing to engage in the suffering to save others. And it's, people talk about it because it's so, at one level, it's so outrageous. But I think it's actually really powerful that you recognize in yourself that you have the ability to do that. You have the ability to want to and try to help everyone and everything.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. I like the words you've chosen and the way you express that. What occurs to me listening to you is, if we were perfectly realized, a Buddha, a fully Christed being, how comfortable and content could we be in nirvana knowing there's suffering all around us?
Exactly.
Said another way, from a Christian perspective, which I never hear people talk about, is, yeah, well, tell me about this heaven. What are you going to do there? Are you going to read? Do they have books? They have movies? Are there ball games? What do you just going to sit on your rocking chair in the front porch in heaven forever, for eternity? And do what? And I think the reason nobody talks about it is there's no easy answer to that. It's like existence has to have a purpose. It has to have a meaning. So nirvana, heaven, samadhi, satori, ecstasy, bliss, conditions, states, without a purpose, without meaning, I can't get my brain around the point of existing without having some purpose or meaning, something to do, a reason to do it, some sense of reward or accomplishment, some way of feeling like you're making a difference in the world. Maybe that's just my limited human brain, but what's the point of just sitting in heaven if you're one of those people who believes in the one shot is all you got, one lifetime? Not sure where that even comes from, by the way. That the early Christian fathers, as I think you know, John, with your experience in Gnosticism, believed in the pre-existence of the soul, if not reincarnation. Origen, for example, of Alexandria, wrote extensively about the pre-existence of the soul. And then that all got wiped out by Constantine's Council of Nicaea. You're not going to be talking about that. The first Council of Nicaea, I think, was 325 AD, and at that point, they adopted the Catholic Church, so-called. The bishops at the Council of Nicaea decided that a new soul was formed upon conception, that God was busy making new souls, and those new souls were tucked into the body at some point at birth. Or now the question is, at what point? These anti-abortion people are real concerned about when life begins. Well, in one sense, life begins, it's right on the birth certificate, the time that life begins. They put it right there at birth. But in another sense, life has no beginning, which is the metaphysical perspective. There is no beginning to life because there is no end to life, because life itself is infinite. So there's no beginning at all to it. The abortion debate is really quite interesting once you get it outside of politics. Start questioning souls and the whole concept of what a soul is and when life begins and what is life even. Didn't George Harrison do a song, What is Life? What is life itself? So thanks for that, John. You want to add to that?
Michael, someone does have their hand up, by the way.
Yeah, I can pass. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Who else, Mindy?
Well, there's just a phone number with a raised hand.
Okay.
Dr.
Holly?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Let me see. I don't want to talk for an hour. Let me see. I'm more or less a Buddhist and a Gnostic, and I think it's important to understand that, well, that in early Christianity, there was a lot of what might be called Gnostic content. I might cite for the moment some words of the historical Jesus. I mean, assuming he existed, when he said, it's often mistranslated, but one of the things he said, as I understand it, was, the kingdom of God is in your midst. Now, you fundamentalists will say, oh, well, that means Jesus. He was talking about God in himself. I think that's all baloney. What it means is, and consistent with what I think you're saying, Michael, and I'm really enjoying what you're saying, we seem to be on the same page. What it means is that heaven or kingdom of God is like a condition or a state. And it's almost like in Zen Buddhism. It's like, hey, it's like right here, if you could but see. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
And it's more about knowledge. It's not so much about faith. It's not so much about a place we go to. And by the way, that whole thing about heaven is, in the future, I think is pretty much what I want, kind of a scam that the Catholic Church came up with, I think, because they're kind of controlling the gateway to that heavenly, beautiful place, you might say. But if it's a condition that it's accessible to all of us, if we do a spiritual practice and do the follow the golden rule, and and are on the mystical path, then it kind of cuts the church out of it. It's like we all have a chance at it, so to speak.
Yes, exactly. We're in the midst of it. It's everywhere around us. It's right here and now. And yeah.
Like a thief in the night.
I'm an old rock and roll DJ, so I always think of these old rock songs, but I think it was Traffic the band Traffic that did a tune, Heaven is in Your Mind. And to go back to the beginning of what you said, in the Gnostic Gospels, I think it's Thomas that Christ says, look, if heaven was above you, the birds would know it before you. If it were below you, the fish would know before you. It's everywhere. It's within you. It's without you. It's everywhere. It's all around you. And you're in the midst of it now, if you could but see. And, of course,
So,
again, the fundamentalists and the mainstream Christians want nothing to do with the books that Constantine tried to burn and were not discovered until 1947 at Nag Hammadi. But I don't know how you call yourself a Christian and not say, oh, we found all these cool new books. Well, what do they have to say, you know?
oh yeah, well, there's quite a body of material. Some very fragmentary, but some of it, like the Gospels of Thomas and Philip, are just gorgeous stuff. Just wow.
Yeah, but it's the metaphysical Christ. It's the mystical, as you indicated, and it does not comport with the story that the Catholic Church developed and that the Protestants, to a large extent, carried about Christ as a personal savior and his sacrifice washing away your sins, which all come from Eve eating the apple. And
Oh boy.
that puts the church in the position of your soul. It's soul robbing. Now, instead of your soul standing between you and your source, the church stands between you and your source. And by the way, did you see we're passing the basket here and we need a new roof? Or the televangelist needs a new Maserati and a mansion and a new jet airplane, because one jet's not enough. I wonder if anybody, Dr. Holly, have you seen you probably don't watch much TV, but there's a program called what is it? The Gemstones, something about gemstones.
Watch a fair amount of drama and sci-fi and such. Gemstone. No, I don't.
It's all about this fundamentalist, this super corrupt fundamentalist right-wing Christian church. And boy, I'm trying to mental blank. I'm trying to think of the head of the church is the played by John. I'm embarrassed. The guy that's the father in The Connors, that was, what's his name? Yeah, embarrassing myself here. Anyway, it's a hilarious, or the first few programs anyway, I think it's sort of run off the rails, but it was a really wonderful satire of what was going on in these televangelist, fundamentalist churches with the mansions and the Rolls Royces and the Maseratis, and using the teachings of Christ of all people to promote what they call a prosperity gospel. And if Christ wanted you to be wealthy or thought there was some benefit in it, he would have said as much. But as we know, quite the contrary. He said that your chances of getting to heaven as a rich man are about the same as a camel getting through the eye of a needle. Store your riches in heaven and not on earth. And yet people just go for this prosperity gospel stuff. And there's a guy, I'm trying to think, there's another guy on TV. I go through these channels late at night, and he's been doing this for decades. He's still doing it. Miracle spring water. If you send him a little money, he'll send you some miracle spring water out of his tap that if you put it on your bills, God will pay the bills.
Michael, we have two people.
You put it on, thank you, Mindy. If you put it on your arthritic hands, it'll be healed, but you need his spring water. How people in 2023 can still buy this stuff, I mean, when the woman was healed from touching Christ's garment, didn't Christ say very clearly it wasn't the garment that did it, but your belief? I think
May I
so.
add something?
I was asking you that question.
Oh, yes, I believe so.
Yeah, go ahead, doctor, and then I...
Yeah, well, there's another little squiggle or whatever it reminded me of. I understand with the Presbyterian Church, they basically consider that if you're rich, that indicates that you're part of the elect, and that ties into a lot of the stuff in America. I'm sorry, I'm kind of fumbling with my words here. Of what you're talking about, the prosperity gospel, that we're in here to create empires and make money and manifest this and all this stuff. A lot of it is based on that principle.
Yeah.
That if you're successful, that indicates you're one of the elect, and this is all good, which is like very, very strange stuff.
That's a different definition of success than I would offer. Thank you. Nice to hear from you. Who else, Mindy?
We have one hand up, but first I wanted to read the comment. Hi to Ka says, it would be nice to reframe, just like from going from changing I forgot language, I think her point is, to I just remembered. And also she mentioned going from I'm afraid I can't. You talk about that a lot in your session.
Yeah.
I think going back to the topic of fear, and then we do have one hand up. Rosemary has her hand up.
Rosemary, go right ahead.
Well, I didn't know if you want to comment on that, Michael.
Oh, I'm not sure specifically what the reference is. I can't say I just remembered if I haven't remembered yet. I'm still trying to remember. A good trick is to say I'll remember in a minute, and that's all very important. When you do remember, say, oh, I just remembered. Don't say I forgot. But I have forgotten. For the moment, the name of that actor. You all know who I'm talking about. The Connors, the father in the Connors.
Oh, Chuck.
No, John something.
Well,
He was Roseanne's husband years ago. And
John Goodman.
John Goodman, there you go.
Righteous Gemstones.
And the other one, thank you. Righteous Gemstones is the TV satire of the right-wing fundamentalists. Righteous Gemstones. Okay, where were we? Rosemary.
There's been quite a lot of talk here about where we're going, upstairs or down. But I'm wondering, can we talk a bit about the fact that we're being faced with our destruction in the film that's just coming, Oppenheimer? Now, most of you won't have seen it, and I haven't either, but it is posing to us all, and many people will see this, where we're due to go quite soon, which is to be destroyed. So Oppenheimer saying, I am become the destroyer of worlds. I just thought I'd ask for a bit of your opinion about whether that's really so timely, as we're so distracted with all the rubbish that we're going on with in politics in this leading country.
Well, that's always been a concern of mine. Speaking for myself, and I'm sure the kind of people that are attracted to a group like this, the whole idea of spiritual development is not to escape responsibility for the world. We don't meditate to turn away from it, but to be more effective in our service, in our action. Nuclear war, an accidental nuclear exchange. There are some stories I have that I don't have time today to get into about being a broadcast journalist, and one in particular in 1969, we received a nuclear alert on the news wires. And we had a packet on the wall that would change every month with code words in it. And the public never knew this was going on, but if you were a journalist, you always had this packet posted in the room where the news tickers were. In those days, you had no computers. You had these big black machines with like typewriters that would spew out news stories. And there was AP and UPI and Reuters and a newspaper wire and a broadcast wire. And they all went flash. Well, beyond urgent is bulletin. Beyond bulletin is flash. You never see a flash. The only one I ever saw was man lands on the moon and nuclear war. This is a warning. This is what did it say? This is not a drill or something like that. And we ripped open the packet to verify the code. And it was accurate. It was exactly the code that verified that we were under nuclear attack. So our responsibility is to sign the radio station off, because we were not a emergency broadcast station. Conorad, they used to call them Conorad stations. Only certain stations would stay on the air. And now I'm in college. I'm 19 years old, and I'm supposed to sign this radio station off, this AM and FM radio station. Well, I freaked out. So I went to a radio in the newsroom, and I went up and down the dial, and every radio station was still on the air. So I called another radio station. I called the newsroom and talked to a guy who said the same thing as me. He says, yeah, I got it. And yeah, we verified. And yeah, I think maybe we're under attack, and nobody else is signing off. And then about 2 minutes later, we get this notice, this flash again. Sorry, accident. Somebody put the wrong tape on the machine. Well, since then, I did the Tom Snyder show on this very topic when he was on Channel 7 in Los Angeles, an afternoon show. And I was talking about nuclear war. And I said it could be triggered by a rising moon or a flight of geese. And he mocked me. He said, come on, Michael. I said, no, wait a minute, Tom. You don't understand. I didn't make that up. Those are cases of real alerts that were triggered by a rising moon and a flock of geese. And it could happen at any time. Nuclear war. And this is back in the Reagan era in the 80s. Where Reagan was saying jokingly, remember he had the open mic and he said, the bombing starts in 5 minutes, ha, 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 ha. Rose, it's just one of a number of scenarios of how we can destroy ourselves. Global warming seems even more imminent than nuclear war. And there's just countless scenarios of how we can destroy ourselves. And that's how nature works. The vast majority of species on this planet that have lived here and danced here
Yes.
and thrived are now extinct for one
Yes, I
reason
think
or
we've had
another.
our time.
It may be. I don't know. So all we can do is be well informed and be concerned, but not be paralyzed by our fear. Today's class is about fear.
Exactly.
Fortunately, I'm all out of time. I'm afraid I'm out of time,
Damn.
which is not really fear, but we cannot allow ourselves to be paralyzed. I'm glad the movie is coming out. I think it is going to be a wake-up, a good anti-war movie, and maybe if saner minds prevail, I don't see the Soviet Union, I'm dating myself. I don't see Russia in a place right now where they're going to disarm their nukes. I don't see China, India, Pakistan has nukes, for God's sakes. England and France, and I think there are 11 or 12 nuclear nations now. It is a concern, and I'm anxious to see the Oppenheimer film. Thanks, Rose.
3 hours long.
Oh my, that's okay. I like film. Hey, everybody. Thank you very much for today. Be not
you.
afraid and step into your fears, even the tiny little ones. That's what I'll leave you with, is those little bits of irritation or nervousness or just that subtle bit of uneasiness that you would never think to call fear. You may say, well, it's just a little bit of anxiety. I'm slightly nervous, somewhat apprehensive, but it's not fear. Yeah, it is. It's something you don't understand, and at the core, it's about you. Know thyself. Close your eyes, meditate, open yourself, step into everything you don't know. The best parts of you are hidden where you're most afraid to look. What if that were true? Wouldn't you want to begin to look at everything that you're afraid to look at deliberately? Be your own hero and join us next Sunday and every Sunday at 11 o'clock. We're also on YouTube, of course, and podcast. You'll find it all by searching Ageless Wisdom Mystery School. I very much appreciate you being here today. Namaste, aloha, salam. Please unmute, say goodbye, and thank you to everybody. And we'll see you next week.
Everyone.
Next
Thank
week.
you, Mike.
Thank you, Michael. Great show today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.
Thank you
Take care.
very
Thanks a lot,
much.
Michael.